So when I met Alan years and years ago, he was actually the first person I ever met that was titled as an experience designer. And I remember being like, oh, what does that mean? And now he leads retail for Samsung and is the vice president over there. So I'm really excited to hear about how his journey has been and what they're doing over at Samsung to incorporate experience and how they think about that.
And I'm so excited to be here.
So first, we want to just give you a little background on what the Experience Index is. Right now, consumers are taking their best experience in any situation and applying it as their new benchmark to every situation, because everyone is kind of doing everything everywhere all the time. So at Gensler, what we try to do is develop research where we can find the best way to create a store that, or a building space that might be the most sustainable or the most efficient. But we also wondered, what if we can quantify experience with an actual number? And so that's where the Experience Index came about. And if you want to download the report on the website, you can learn more about it. But we'll just be touching on some of these things about what makes a great retail shopping experience.
We will.
So how can retailers compete on experience?
You know, it's funny, we at Samsung, we recently kicked off our own stores program. We opened stores in New York at Roosevelt Field, in Glendale, LA, Glendale, the Americana, and at Houston in the Houston Galleria. And we started off with this evolution of what we had started at 837 in the meatpacking district of New York, which was about like, how do we create a way for people to meaningfully interact with our product, with the intention that we'll get them to develop a relationship, we'll get them to engage, and somewhere down the line they will become members of our family, and they'll make our products part of their life. And so the pursuit is around, how do you create those meaningful experiences? What does that mean? What does meaningful experience mean? How does that tie back to the products that we're trying to support the public in living their life with? And that's really the linchpin is you can talk about features in a product, but if you can make those features relevant to the way that they are living their lives, then you have a better chance of actually becoming part of that day-to-day rigor. And so the first 3 stores that we opened were very much about exploring the way that we can help people interact with our product. And they've been great in terms of allowing people to explore and to create and to engage. But as we're doing it, we're also taking the learnings. We have a lot of really great analytics products that we leverage within our stores to understand how long people linger in different parts of the store, what they engage with, how long they engage with it, when they flip over to a next section of content. This is all in observing the way that people are behaving, so that as we're editing and evolving, that we're doing it based on quantifiable, real metrics that we can then assign those values to. I think one of the really interesting things about the Experience Index was that it was focused on identifying which parts of experience had value and then assigning a value that we could then use to prioritize what we were going to do within our engagement environments. I think what we've got in our stores currently and moving into the future is an environment where we're leveraging that understanding in a way that that allows us to continually test it, continually improve it, and then push those learnings forward into the next things that we're doing.
So right now, I guess we've been saying the last few years have been an era of experience, whereas previously it was an era of efficiency. People were looking at how they could pack the most merchandise into an environment, move the most product. And now, would you say there's a trade-off with creating great experiences in stores and selling a lot of product?
Well, at Samsung, the way that we're approaching retail is that we are not so much focused on where you buy our product as much as we are focused on, creating great product that you will want to buy. We don't care where you buy it. So with retail, that's kind of approaching it in a different way. You're not saying, oh, we've got these stores, we got to make these stores perform from a sales standpoint. Well, we got to make them perform from a product ecosystem standpoint. And what I mean by that is, a lot of our business is carrier business. Most of our units, phone units, for instance, are sold through carriers. So we have to make our stores a part of their ecosystem in support of them. So now that, if they've got an issue or they want to learn more about the products that they purchase at carriers, they can come to the stores and they can get, warranty service, or they can take classes. They could buy product there if they wanted to. Everything, we've got an infinite aisle kind of availability in there. These are all really examples of that context, age of efficiency, age of experience. We're in the age of experience, but we still need to, have a value proposition, right? The thing that's interesting about these three cycles, or the description of these three cycles, is that, for commerce to work, you have to have a stable context, because commerce is about building processes around a stable context that allows you to, to reliably and sustainably convert, whatever that is, whether it's a service or a product. And the reality is that because of the information age, it's enabled people to create their own context for themselves, wherever they want it, whenever they want it. And so it's interesting to think about, this age of belonging. I wonder what that actually means, to be honest, because right now we're maybe it means it's the age of me, because really, our universes are becoming more self-centered, not necessarily in a bad way, but from what I can get from service standpoint, I can get what I want when I want it, whenever I want it, right? And that's a challenge for businesses. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do from an experience standpoint is create the ability for people to develop relationships with what we make, so that then they can take those relationships the next step, and make them personal, make them about them, leverage them on their own behalf.
I think part of what we're looking at with this idea of the age of belonging, which is to come, is that when they've taken inventories of depression and loneliness, they're kind of at all-time highs. So despite this constant digital connection, we're saying, can our physical spaces, like retail stores or any other physical space, be a place where people can come together and have community? And what is the role of the provider of those spaces in kind of facilitating that to happen?
Yeah, that's, I get that. I guess it's almost like that, those experiments with animals and pellets, right? Where they push a button and they get satisfied. They satisfy whatever it was. They push a button, and we're in that kind of button pushing era where, we get we can get everything, or we think we can get everything from our devices, right? Mm-hmm. It's really when you get into an environment where you can experience things, but not by yourself, right? With others. Because there is that isolation, there is that increased depression. The prescriptions of Prozac are through the roof these days. So, that ties into what we do or where we find business opportunity with our products, is that, we make the things that allow the environment to enhance its value proposition, right? That it's not just four painted walls, but it's walls that come alive. Uh-huh. It's rooms that through technologies like AI allow us to make them react in a meaningful way to what's happening inside them. I know that we did a lot of work together at Gensler when I was there around real-time capture of data, mm-hmm. right? Spatial data. And one of the reasons why I was really excited to come to Samsung was because we touch every part of kind of this ecosystem of experience supported by technology, and the rectangle is becoming less of a rectangle. The walls are becoming more like portals to different places. It's a really interesting time right now, and a lot of technology is being developed, and it's blooming and it's wilting and it's disappearing, and new things come, but we're always there, we're always looking, we're always listening, we're always trying new things. So in terms of what's next in isolation and the value of experience, experience is the reason we go to physical places, right? Otherwise we can stay home and not go anywhere, and try to figure out what experience is on our own. But I don't think that's part of what humanity is, right? I don't think that's part of the human experience. So I think it's interesting to explore. Right now, the challenge is how do we assign that meaningful value to what experience is in a way that we can say, here's your ROI.
Mm-hmm. So one way that we look at it is, how are we effectively meeting all of the different modes a person is in when they're shopping? And while 49% of that is task driven, I'm actually going there to buy a product. We've learned that 10% of it is aspirational. People are just looking. 7% is entertainment. They want to have fun. 19% is about discovery, and 15% is about having a social experience. So to all of the points you're making, I think that some of the experiences you've developed have been great at sort of hitting on all of these touch points.
Well, and really the challenge is, or the opportunity is, that this isn't something that you can set and forget. Right? This isn't, I don't think we're in a place anymore where you can say, well, this one thing is going to serve the needs of everybody around the world in the same way all the time. Localization is incredibly important, right? Being relevant to the place where you're going. What works here in the States doesn't work in other parts of the world. What works here in Orlando doesn't work in other parts of the country. Even down to the cities. We have districts, we have different parts of LA, for instance. You have the arts district that is very invested in the art world, or was at one point. And that's a very unique experience, and people go there for that unique experience. And if you try to put something in that context that didn't make sense, then it'll fail. And so how do we leave enough room in all of these notions of the value of experience, right? From task to experiential to social. How do you leave enough room in a concept for physical engagement to be flexible enough to allow you that adaptability, but still make it an ownable brand experience? And I don't think it's something that anybody has figured out. I was in Tokyo a couple of weeks ago. I went to these team lab experiential spaces, and that's exactly what they're selling. They're only selling experience. And you go into this room that's made of rods of LED that they're hanging there, but through the LEDs changing colors and motion in them, it creates an entire kind of emotional experience through sound and sight and the design of the space. Our ability to do that and to sell just that, people pay money to come and to do just that, it's incredibly engaging, it's incredibly emotional, but it's something that once you see it once, you may come back to it at a later date, some years down the road, or maybe you'll bring somebody that there. But you have to change it. It has to keep evolving. Even amusement parks, continually evolve and reinvent themselves. So, experiences, it's a tricky thing. I come up here to say that experience is a tricky thing, but it is. I don't think it's something that's quantifiable, and I don't think it's ever going to be something that's quantifiable to the point where we can attach a value. But what we can do is that when we engage in things of experience, that we are observing not just what we did in that engagement, but in the surrounding environment, the surrounding context. Because when we do something in a space like 837, if it's targeted towards a product, for instance, and we don't see a lot of conversion at that location, but in the surrounding locations we see a bump in conversion, then we can say, hey, that was worth it, right? We did this thing and we spent some resources, but it resulted in awareness of our product that then resulted in a bump in sales, a bump in conversion. But in order for us to do that, we have to have awareness to not just that small context where we're engaging, but the broad context of all of our our retail, our marketing, our production, our design, all of those things together, they create that kind of our universe. And to do that, we need to have those deep analytics. We need to have the ability to connect to all of those points of information consistently, and persistently, so that when we make change in one place, that we're able to assign a value to what kind of effect that change had in the rest of our universe.
So one thing I wanted to touch on was your point about time and thinking about a spatial experience over time. And I wonder how much of that has to do with generational shifts. I personally kind of think the generations are sort of an arbitrary distinction, and you're always seeing people share on Facebook, oh, you might be a Zennial, like these new made-up generations. But one thing that we did find in the experience index was that boomers were least likely to report having a great experience in a store. So one thing that we do recommend is making sure that task mode, knowing that a customer's purpose is to buy something, that is as seamless and efficient as possible. But I wonder how you think about generations when you're working on experience design.
So I don't like to think about them as generations. I like to think about them as behaviors, right? So you don't have to be part of a generation to share a behavior with another generation, right? So they are popular contextual behaviors. So if you design towards a generation, then what you're doing is you're excluding everyone else in a way. You're focusing your efforts on serving the needs of this one segment of the population that's generational. And to me, that's a mistake, because if you do that, then you're by default you're not serving these other people in a way that's meaningful to them. So it's about identifying those value propositions within the transaction environment, within the experience environment. It's like people need service. People need to have their physical real-time needs met, right? People need access to infinite aisle. They need access to all of your product category. So when they come into a store, they're not just looking for what you've got in the store, but if you're representing a brand, you need to represent the entire brand. So we try to design to behaviors, right? In the process of designing to those behaviors, we do hit the needs of the millennial and the Gen X, and boomers. But for us to serve one specifically, it's just, it's counterproductive to what we want everybody to have. We want everybody to have the best experience we can give them.
Okay, so I know we were kind of going back and forth on whether you can actually quantify this process. So the way that we did develop the scoring system was we looked at, in terms of spatial qualities, functionality, ambience, and amenities. And then we also looked at interactions. So interactions between customers and staff, and interactions between humans and technology. And then we also looked at people's expectations. So their sense of the product and the brand and the context. What were they going into a space knowing about? Those types of things. So that was just kind of how we tried to assign a value to everything. And what we did find was that users who reported that the space had a good design also had the best experience. So it was really beneficial for us as a design firm to see that kind of information. And I know no one would argue for a poorly designed store, but when you're saying a design is good, it's something that's so subjective. It really has to be, is this really meeting the brand? Is this kind of in line with that whole omni-channel of what the brand's trying to capture? And what's beautiful for one brand is not going to be appropriate for another. So that's where I think all of the kind of subjectivities and intrinsic things we can't really describe sort of come in.
And I can say that I agree with that, with that one big finding. You know, when
Okay.
you're in a place you like, you know, you're going to have a good time and you're going to come out with a great experience. Great. So we're good?
Oh, we are done. Thank you.
Thank you.